I do love my shop, I'll tell you.
We're now in Barbara Dill's shop. Since we've been doing shop tours for Richmond Woodturners, we've had several requests to visit Barbara's shop to take a look around. So Barbara, thank you very much for inviting us.
My pleasure.
A little bit about Barbara. Barbara has been turning for over 30 years. She is a founding member, one of the 5 founding members of Richmond Woodturners, and thank you for starting our club for us. She is a teacher, a demonstrator. She's demonstrated several locations throughout the United States and Canada. She's been published at least 5 times in the AAW American Woodturners magazine. She is a master of off-center or multi-axis turning, in that she can not only anticipate the outcome, but she can also repeat it and reverse it, do the opposite if she needs to. And she's also an author. You've written a book that's currently sold on Amazon.com. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a curiosity question.
Sure.
You had a master's in psychiatric nursing and a career. You retired a little early. You could do anything you wanted to do. Why wood turning?
I'll tell you why, but I have to move back here. So I don't know if you can see this or focus in on this, but while I worked in the ER at MCV, I always took the Smithsonian and National Geographic. And that would help me stay sane, because ER certainly made me insane at times. But I saw this image of 2 wooden bowls out of dark wood. And I said to my partner, then Shelley, those pieces of art, they speak to my soul. They're just beautiful. The only way I'd ever get to have that would be make it myself. But I had never worked with wood. And within the next week, a flyer came from Henrico Adult Education, and Shelley said, look, there's a carving class, you should look into it. So Sid Morton was my teacher, and he and his wife became our friends until they both died. They were my parents' age. But I loved the class. I would drag myself out of the ER, and we did relief carving with a mallet and chisel. And here's one of the things I made out of walnut in relief carving, but I wanted to make a bowl. So Sid helped me do that, and I was able to make this fish bowl carved all by hand. And I fell in love with wood. I had a carving table set up in my living room, and I'd come home and I'd use my mallet and chisel, and it doesn't make a lot of dust, it just makes chips. So I would create these things, and I'd go to that class every week. But I fell in love with wood. At the same time, I was getting burned out with not only having seen too much pain and suffering in ERs, and also having been an administrator in nursing, getting frustrated with the healthcare system. So in November of '89, I was able to quit my job, and I actually didn't know what I was going to do. For 6 months, I cried at every telephone commercial. You know how sappy they were? I'd just sit there and cry. But I decided that I started going to craft shows, and I saw turned wood. And I'd never seen that before. And I thought, I bet I can do that. So I went to Aramont in the summer of 1990. Michael Hasseluk was the teacher. It was a design class. It was the only spot available. I was the only woman. They were kind to me because I didn't know what a headstock and a tailstock was. I was in that shop from 6 until midnight, all day, every day, for that whole week. And I came home, and a lot of my first pieces that I made, I've kept, and they're on a top shelf up there. And I thought they were the best things I had ever done. They're pretty primitive. I don't think I can reach it, but we didn't have 4-jaw chucks back then, so they all have holes in the bottom. But anything that was successful, I thought it was great. So I enjoyed doing that. So that's how I got into wood turning. Came home, bought a big General lathe. I've been turning ever since.
Well, it looks like we're standing in front of the workhorse.
Yes.
Powermatic.
Yes.
Why Powermatic? What do you like about it? If you could change anything, what would you? Have you done anything to the lathe in particular? Just tell me about the lathe. Tell us about the lathe a little bit.
Well, I love this lathe. It's the second type of lathe I got. My first one was a General lathe. And it was also had a 20-inch swing, a 2-horsepower motor, but it was really hard to switch the what do you call it, the belt, and to fix. So I finally sold it, and I got my first Powermatic from Rudy Osolnik's son, who was selling them out of Berea. And what I loved about it is that Rudy had helped design this headstock to make it more friendly for wood turners so that you can move it back and forth. So if you're hollowing something or making a bowl, instead of throwing your leg over and sitting on the bed, which is what we were doing back there, I studied with David Ellsworth in, I think, 92, and came home and made hollow vessels, and I sat on the lathe, and I tell you, the older you get, the harder that is. But this headstock will move down. You can remove the tailstock, and you can stand at the end of the lathe. It's always had as much power as I want. The only thing that hasn't been great is that in order to freeze the shaft, there's a button there. So I put I think somebody made this kit. And you can actually slide that to cover the button. And now that's frozen, and you can do whatever you needed to do. So there have been a few tricks that have made this lathe easier to use. But in general, I have no problem with it at all. I think it's great. And I modified my light so that it goes with the headstock and it's not sitting there. And it's just a wooden block that I've bolted onto that. So this light serves me well. Every time I move the headstock down, it comes with it.
Is that bolted onto the piece that normally has the cage
Yes,
that comes over on the lathe?
cage that nobody ever uses. Yes.
Well, we're in a wonderful, wonderful shop. Put you on the spot. How many square feet?
Oh, gosh. Is it 24 by 36 or something like that?
And it's as beautiful outside as it is inside.
Well, when I first started turning wood, we lived on the north side. I lived on a third of an acre in an old Victorian house on Noble Avenue, and the shop I had was it was an old 1912 garage, and it was about the size of this quadrant of the shop. And I would have to get a path from the outdoors to my lathe every time I wanted to do something or change a project. And it was quite small. So in 2003, Shelley and I decided that we wanted to go out into the country and buy a piece of land, and I needed a bigger space. And so we did. We found this space, and right here was all woods where we are now, but we had it cleared, and I built the shop in 2004. And it's been delightful. On the north side, every time I powered up my chainsaw, all these kids would come over. And there was not any peace and quiet in terms of being quiet enough to really think about what I was doing. I always had company, which was good in a way, but I do love the peacefulness about this. I can fire up my chainsaw, I can work outside, and I don't alarm anybody. And so it's nice and quiet, which is what I've needed to do my work.
You work a lot of different aspects of wood turning. So your shop is kind of compartmentalized. It's set up a little bit different from most shops. Would you take some time and just walk us around and introduce us to your shop?
Sure. Let me just also say that I was a bowl turner from the 1990s. I always was fascinated with multi-axis turning. And I got frustrated at the end of the 90s because I didn't know what to do other than change the axis and just make forms that looked a lot like these up here. Let's take this one out. I made hundreds of forms, but I was frustrated because I didn't know what to do next. So I really got interested in figuring out how to understand multi-axis turning in 2006. So what you're going to see, I'll walk around my shop, I'll talk about different things, but what you're going to see, I have studies out. I have pieces that all over the shop that were actually my studies, and they were also good because I was getting the skill needed to create these forms. So all the hours I spent on the lathe was beneficial not only in discovering what to do next, but also get the skill in order to turn these things. So over here, since we're over here, I have my sharpening station, and I have a Wolverine jig. I have it set up 2 wheels that are, that one is really the first CBN wheel I got at SWAT years ago. And I thought it was a huge advancement. I think it was when they were just coming out. They're balanced. There's not a lot of the dust that happened when you used, what were they called, the white stones, what are they
Regular
called?
wheels.
The regular wheels, aluminum oxide wheels.
Yes.
They were dusty. You'd have to sand them out, the aluminum oxide wheels. These are really balanced. I'll turn it on and show you. There's hardly any vibration, and what comes off is this metal right here, which I have magnets to catch, and it's pretty cool. I don't really use it to fill wood, but some people do. But this just falls down, and it doesn't get in your lungs, I hope, because I don't wear a mask when I sharpen. And so this has been a really wonderful way for me to sharpen wood. I mean, my tools. Some of my tools are over here. Some of my tools are here. The ones that I always use are out. And the others are there and under here. Hollowing tools are under there. Bigger hollowing tools are over there, and then there's some on the wall. But they're all within reach, so when I'm turning, if I'm using a bowl gouge, one of my favorite tools that sharpen like a spindle gouge, I'll sharpen all 3 or 4 at once. And then when I'm turning, I just go through them. I don't usually need to sharpen very often, but I'll tell you, a sharp tool is just amazing when you're when you're working.
Do you have a preference of a particular signature tool or brand of tool that you like, or do you have a potpourri of tools?
I don't have the only preference I have, and let me find it, is that one way, and I don't know if they still do. This used to be, the flute used to be 6 inches long on this one-way, half-inch spindle gouge. And most of the spindle gouges have flutes that are 4 or 5 inches long, and when you use them a lot, you can hardly sharpen them with that jig when you get down to the round part of the tool. So I always say these one-way, half-inch spindle gouges are probably the best ones on the market. Like I said, I haven't bought a tool in a while, so I don't know if they're still there. I went through a phase of using these detail gouges, but I don't use them that much. I'm not that impressed with them. They just have more metal in them. And if I need to reach over the tool rest to do a project, what I have done is sharpened a half-inch bowl gouge with exactly the same angles that I sharpen a spindle gouge with. And this gives me, if the tool rest, if it has to hang over more than 1 inch, this gives me a lot of stability when I'm making a cut. Which taught me that, you know, whatever you need to use when you're turning wood, be creative about how you sharpen it. So
your sharpening station is near the lathe.
Right?
Obviously, you sharpen regularly.
Yes.
Where do you go from here in your shop?
So this is a carving bench that I have, and underneath it, it has a lot of carving tools. And underneath that, a mini lathe. I have 2 mini lathes for when I teach out here. But this I have set up as a workstation of, like, I was doing some split turnings and I need to separate them, so I'll do them over here, scrape the glue off, and I do some finishing here. And then I have a whole pile of stuff that is just a pile of stuff over there. But here's some candle holders that I'm going to take to a gallery tomorrow. And then here's some experimental pieces that I've done that really aren't my idea. I saw them done and I like the idea, but it's not my idea. So that's the value of this space here. This is a Delta bandsaw with a 4-inch riser block on it, and I've used it since 1990 when I started. That summer I bought a lathe and I bought a bandsaw, and I have a few chainsaws, and I think those are the most important tools that I have. So this bandsaw has lasted so far, but I'm going to get it tweaked in September so it'll even be more user-friendly, I think. So This is where so I cut my wood outside. I use all green wood. I gather it. Some people bring it to me, but a lot of people call me and say if a tree is down, so I'll cut it up, bring it here. And I'll cut it into just segments and then use the bandsaw to cut it into a usable form that I can turn something out of. So this will be a future candle holder.
Do you have a favorite species that you turn?
The one I'm working with.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer.
I used to love holly because for my work, I didn't like the grain at all. I just wanted the form. And holly is a perfect wood for no interference with anything but the form. And so when you photograph it or put a light on it, you can see the shadows on each axis. And now I've got this huge amount of curly maple, and I am totally in love with it. I love the way it's turning, and I love the way it looks. So, but I do like lighter woods because with multi-axis work, you can see the shadows when they're lit. Another wood that I'm surprised about is this. I had a Virginia pine fall in an ice storm in the winter. And I've never turned pine, but when it fell, I looked at the ends and it looked really tight grained and really good to work with. So I brought some in the shop and I made this piece, and I love the way the grain just deals with the coves that I've turned. So I think I'm expanding my interest about not just form, but the way the wood itself, the natural wood, relates to that form. And then over here, I have my setup for photographs. And it's a vinyl gradated piece of material. I used to love photography, and I've done a lot of photography in my life. When I first started, I would use lights and have the light block to darken the top, and now this vinyl backdrop makes it really nice. So I turn all the lights off in the shop, get my light here, and usually that's about where it stays. And I put my camera on this tripod, and I'm sorry, I'm hard to photograph, aren't I? And I have a telephoto lens on it, so the camera is always back there. And that's how I take my photographs. I put it on a timer, and I honor the f-stop. I usually do f16. So the what do you call it? The
Aperture.
The aperture is open, and the focal point is wider. So it makes really crisp, nice photographs. I have a lot of pieces of work scattered all over my shop, underneath things and on tables, that are bowls I've made that I may embellish in some way or sand or finish. But they're all waiting for me to have the time and the patience to do it. But I always get focused on a new idea and a new project, and I keep going forward. It's hard to go back to those. But one day I'll do it.
I see an old drill press over there. Are you still using it?
I do. I use my lathe for my drill press whenever I can, but every now and then I need a drill press. So that's a really old, I think, Delta press, and it works well. Got it from Doug Campbell, bought it from Doug Campbell. Oh yeah, and my heating system and my cooling system. This is a big shop. And normally I have the doors open, my lathe is pointed so I can watch outside. I love the birds and I love the trees. But when it's really hot like today or really cold, I can control the temperature somewhat. This little air conditioning unit is all I have on today, and it's pretty hot outside and humid. But it just takes the humidity out, so it makes it tolerable. Plus I have a fan that I always have on me if I need it. And then this radiant heater is propane, and it's wonderful. It heats this area really nicely. In fact, my head gets hot on really cold days, but it warms the shop up within 15 minutes. And I usually wear, a sweatshirt or something, so I don't need it to be really hot in my shop. So that's adequate for that. This is a cymbal stand that I have this
Symbol as in drum set?
drum set
Okay.
cymbal stand. I can make it go higher and lower, so I can adjust it. And I realized that the way to control dust in your shop is to get it at the source. So I have this here whenever I sand. I have it on, and I also have it attached to my bandsaw. So I have this jet, what do you call that system? Ray.
Just a dust
You used to
collector.
sell them. I bought it from Ray years ago. It's a dust collection system, works really well for me. And then I use that if I feel like it's really dusty in here. I don't like wearing masks. But there's some cases that I need to, but rarely ever, since I turn green wood and it only makes dust when I'm sanding. So what else?
Well, we've kind of focused on the front half.
All right.
We don't necessarily need to go to the back half. We've only seen half of your shop. And I also noticed there's an upstairs.
There is.
Is that storage or gallery? Or?
It's a gallery of older work, but I have all of my multi-axis work down here. Like I said, these are all studies. Before I actually make a object that I think is worth selling, I turn that idea again and again. I do it on many axes. I experiment with the length of whatever. And finally, I'm ready to make something that I think I can sell. So all these are studies, split turnings, and all the stuff. And they help me remember where I've been and where I might want to go. And then there's stairs over there. And upstairs, I have most of my older work, some bowls I've turned, a lot of books up there. That's what that is. What I need to do now is sort of venture out now that I have more time to turn my wood and make things, focus more on finishing and using fillers like that, which I've sort of neglected. So I'm excited about turning. I come out here every day. I have a stereo system here. I can turn the music on really loud and just turn away. So it's a wonderful thing to do.
I like to ask people if you could start all over again, how would you change your shop? But I don't think there'll be much change. You're in love with your shop.
I know. No, I like it just the way it is. Yeah.
Where do you store your wood besides the few pieces under the table?
Well, when they're not under my feet and here, because I always just drop them near the bandsaw, I have them on the deck, because I have a deck that wraps all the way around the shop. It has a tin roof on it, and in thunderstorms, it's wonderful just to hear the rain on it. I have some benches out here that I can work on when the weather permits, and a lot of storage area for the wood that I've cut up and will probably use sometime soon. When I thought I retired during COVID, I actually made that Adirondack chair that's right here. So I used a bench out there when it was spring or fall, or it was comfortable enough to do that kind of work. So it was fun.
Well, this has been a fascinating tour. If people listening have a question, can they contact you? Can we give them your contact information?
Sure. Yeah.
You can contact Barbara Dill a couple of different ways. bdill6@verizon.net.
That's
I think
right.
that's your email.
Yep.
And then you have a website.
I do.
Barbara Dill at
It's just barbaradill.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's quite a website.
Pretty clever.
You should take some time to take a look at it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. This has been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Thank you for coming out here. I love showing off my shop.